Good evening, everybody. This is Eric Foster. Normally, when I make a video post, I'm making it in representation of one of the entities that I work for or causes that I'm involved in. But today, I'm just doing this for me. So this is not affiliated with anybody that I work with, am connected to, but this is my own thoughts. So I wanted to say first, what happened yesterday, the killing of Charlie Kirk, the shooting at the school in Colorado, are all tragic events. And the reason why I'm referencing the school shooting in Colorado, along with the murder of Charlie Kirk, is because they all are tied to a dynamic of gun violence that's taking place in America, but they also need to be looked at and talked about in the same vein. Because right now there's too much conversation that's happening just focused on the murder of Charlie Kirk and not focused on the students who were shot and are in Colorado's hospitals because of a domestic terrorist at their school. Now, we know who the terrorist is at their school who shot them, and he's going to go through the criminal process. But what he did was a terrorist attack. It's a domestic terrorist attack. It's not necessarily aligned with a group or ideology, but it is domestic terror and it needs to be communicated as such. Separately, we don't know anything about who shot and killed Charlie Kirk yet. We don't know the gender of the person, the race of the person, the voting history of the person, the social media presence of the person, statements of the person. We don't know anything about the person. And unfortunately, in that vacuum, Donald Trump and the MAGA combination of the MAGA dictatorship regime, which he heads, the MAGA fascist Republican Party in Congress, or I'm not even going to call them Republican, the MAGA fascist party in Congress, the MAGA mainstream media has all glammed on to claim that the shooting of Charlie Kirk and incidences where people who are in the MAGA political ideology or movement have been met with violence is all part of a conspiracy of non-MAGA Americans that they have to respond to in arms and in other acts of violence, condemnation, jailing us, etc. Now, you may say, okay, that's bad that those things are being said, but Eric, you might be being a little bit hyperbolic. Yeah, no, I'm not. So, what I'm going to do, because I think it's important, is I'm going to share my screen because there are certain things that I think need to be shown as a part of the communication here so people can know clearly what's being said and how it is putting non MAGA people in jeopardy. So let me share my screen here because I think it is important. All right. So I'm going to start first with what Donald Trump said yesterday in a vlog message about the murder of Charlie Kirk. Now, while he starts off in a decent point, consideration and concern for Charlie and his family, then he goes in at about the 1 minute and 39-second mark in regards to the need to confront the fact that violence and murder are a tragic consequence of demonizing those who disagree with you in the most hateful and despicable ways possible. But then he completely segregates himself and his movement from any of the verbiage that they use and puts it all on non-MAGA Americans. When he uses the term the radical left is a catch-all for basically all of the non-MAGA Americans who did not support him. Combination of the 75 million, 17,613 Americans who voted for Vice President Harris, the 19 states and the District of Columbia, the 25 states, 82,268,924 that President Biden won in terms of voters in 2020, and the 65,888,000, I believe, 624 that Secretary Clinton won in 2016. But also the third party candidate totals and those who didn't vote and those who voted down ballot and skipped the top of the ticket. In Trump's mind and in the MAGA universe's mind, if you're not on board with them, you're part of the radical left. So it's not just the elected officials, but it's you, the voters, you, the communities that in a majority voted against him and MAGA related candidates. So let's get back to what he said, because the effort that he's doing is taking this murder and using it to further a desire to attack non-MAGA America. So he says, for years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we've seen in our country today, and it must stop now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to the other political violence, including the organizations that funded and supported, as well as go those who go after judges, law enforcement, and anyone else who brings order to the country. Now, remember, their whole premise that's been clear over the past few months is that Democratic and non-MAGA Americans are living in crime-ridden cesspool places within the country, that we hate America, that we are supportive of criminals and people who violate the law, that we're defending gangs and terrorists and all these other untowards. And as they've been saying as of late, that those in our communities who commit crime in the Democratic majority voting communities are animals and savages who can't be redeemed. And so there's this whole dynamic when you tie all of that together to what he's saying here. It's a demonization that justifies the military dictatorship response. I mean, we have to be real, and I'm being very clear, and that's why I'm making this from myself and not from anybody else that I'm affiliated with, because ultimately I know that some people will say, well, this is too soon. And what about the dynamic of toning down the rhetoric and the temperature? Nobody on the MAGA side has toned down anything. They have been, since yesterday, ratcheting up the calls for violence, retribution, jailing, and criminalizing anybody who's not a MAGA person. And so while non-MAGA people have all come out and condemned the murder, condemned the violence that took place, and repudiate any violence, especially if anything is done in the name of non-MAGA and pro-democracy forces in the country, That's not good enough for them. We're all in the same bucket. And we have to be pragmatic and understand that's the world that we're living in. So when I see people of, I believe, goodwill who are trying to say, well, how do we get past this point and what can we do to bring the world back together and America back together? We're past that point. And we can't fix anything if we continue to live in a lie fest to ourselves that these things are real and that there's one faction, one side of America who completely rejects the idea that we're all Americans. And it is the MAGA side. It's not the Green Party folks or the Libertarians or the Workers' Party. It's not the Democratic Socialists or the Socialists. It's not Democratic Party. It's not independents. It's not non-MAGA regular Republicans. Vermont Governor Phil Scott is a regular Republican. It's not any of us that are saying anything about violence or the like. It's just them. So let me just keep going. So, from the attacks on my life in Butler, Pennsylvania, which killed the husband and father, to the attacks on ICE agents, to the vicious murder of a healthcare executive in the streets of New York, to the shooting of House Majority Leader Steve Scalise and three others, radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives. Now, here's the interesting dynamic with that. So while he is claiming that folks on our side are the problem, notice he didn't mention anything about Minnesota Democratic State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, who were killed by a MAGA fascist terrorist, a MAGA domestic terrorist. He didn't say anything about Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, who were shot by the same MAGA domestic terrorist. He didn't say anything about the MAGA domestic terrorist who killed Judge Solis's son and attempted to kill her. He didn't say anything about the MAGA supporting individual, the terrorist, who attacked Paul Pelosi. Remember, he and his people joked about that. When the Minnesota representative and senator were shot and killed earlier this year, most of the MAGA elected officials said nothing about it. A few said some small little words. Some, like Mike Lee, tried to find any way they could to blame it on non MAGA Americans. And Trump said, I'm not even going to call the governor and talk to, and I'm not going to call the family. He hasn't called the family of any of them yet. So when I hear folks on the pro democracy side in this point in this time speak to the need to get past and to try to bind us back together, do you realize that these people on the other side have no interest in connecting with us? When people in our camp are murdered by their supporters, they ignore it, they act like it didn't happen, and they will try to lie about it. But they want us to fully find our resoluteness of spirit and support and renounce who we are if someone is murdered or hurt on their side. And remember, we're not the ones advocating for that. I bring up this screen because one thing I've been tracking is MAGA related and white supremacist related terrorism, because since 2010, roughly 78% of all of the domestic violence, American based terrorist activities have taken place and come from people in the right, on the right, or people in the MAGA universe. So here's just a list of some of the ones besides the ones that I mentioned. 2017, bombing of a mosque in Bloomington, Minnesota by MAGA militia members. The 2018 October Kentucky Kroger in Jeffersontown, Kentucky, Kroger MAGA attack that targeted Black customers and killed two by a self-declared MAGA white supremacist. Of course, you have the El Paso Walmart terrorist attack that was conducted by a MAGA person, but a lot of people forget about the November 2017 Colorado Walmart MAGA terrorist attack, who killed three Hispanic Americans. The Portland in 2017 MAGA train attack, where white supremacists targeted Muslim Americans. The 2018 Nashville, Tennessee Waffle House MAGA white supremacist attack targeting African Americans, killing four customers. The 2019 St. Petersburg MAGA white supremacist attack on African Americans, on African American men, the 2019 Gilroy, California Garlic Festival MAGA-aligned attack, where Hispanic immigrants were targeted, three were killed, 15 were injured. Then, of course, you have what happened in 2022 at Buffalo in regards to that particular MAGA terrorist attack. And this is just a list of some of the other ones that have taken place in places from Oklahoma in 2014, in Idaho in 2024. And, so there's been a significant amount in LA in 2023. Richard Yappel, a MAGA white supremacist, murdered and killed himself eventually, but murdered people. In Jacksonville, Florida, at the Dollar General, a MAGA terrorist attack, August 26, 2023. So these things happen, but how many times have you seen Donald Trump and any MAGA official, Mike Johnson, Jim Jordan, John Thune, J.D. Vance, Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, any of these folks say anything about condemning the MAGA terrorists that committed these murders and calling for peace and calm and trying to unite and show any sort of grace to non-MAGA Americans? You haven't seen any, and you're not going to see any. So when we're having the conversations, we have to be honest about what we're dealing with. As my grandmother Foster always said, if you can't accept the reality of your situation before you start to make an action plan, you'll never be able to achieve any sort of real outcome. You're basically going to be living in a fantasy world. And so that's the reality. Now, I'm going to go back to the transcript because I always believe it's important to read the transcripts of the things that come out of Trump and his team's mouths so that we have an understanding of what they're saying. So I want to go to another event where they talked about cities that are Democratic. Let me kind of go to that. I'm going to do a search. And because I want you to see the phraseology that they use to describe and to castigate Democrats. So this was when they were renaming the Department of Defense the Department of War. What the Democrats and Biden have done in this country will go down in infamy, the worst inflation, liberal judges destroying the country. So, we had 11,000 murders dropped into our country, claiming that happened under President Biden, which is a lie. They're dangerous. We got to get them out. So that's, just using that as one example. So let me go to another term when he talks about Democratic cities and he talks about Democrats wanting men to play in women's sports, which is a lie, but it's all a part of the dehumanization of non-MAGA Americans, because remember, for him, everything is, if you're a non-MAGA American, you're in the Democratic camp. So Democrats, let's see, I say the Democrats, if you gave them everything they wanted, every point they ever dreamt of, you wouldn't get one Democratic vote. They really are. They're deranged, sick. It's crazy. If you give them a list of the top 10 things the Democrats wanted in a bill to get and put it in the bill to get it passed, you wouldn't get one vote. And so, but they're dying. They're down to 16%, so I'm just kind of using this. But then what I really want to get to is the way that they talk about our cities. So you can walk in the Capitol. DC was already a safe city before he invaded DC, but the let's see, what does he say about our, because it's important in terms of when he talks about Democratic majority voting communities being communities where they are filled with crime and violent people, and it's just these hellscapes of criminality. And let's see, uh, oh, then he talks about voting. This is when he moved the Space Force from Colorado to Alabama. And he talks about Democrats cheating in elections. Democrats don't cheat. Republicans don't cheat. MAGA Republicans don't cheat. He's trying to cheat. People around him are trying to cheat, but he castigates any election where we win as an illegal election. Let me go to, you know what? That's what I'm going to use. Let me use the city of Chicago. And so he talks about Chicago. He talks about Chicago had all these murders where, well, unfortunately, yes, Chicago does have challenges with crime, but here's the reality. Chicago is a city of 2.7 million people. On the weekend, when the people who work in the city come in, there's over 3 million people that come into that city. While it's tragic that 11 people were killed and 68 people were wounded by gunshots, at 79 people out of over 3 million people in a particular city, a city that is over, I want to say, 500,000 blocks within that city blocks. So while the crime is happening, it's not happening on every corner. It's not a war zone. But then he says that if you dispute him with facts, that somehow you're sick and you are supporting cities being blood filled and wretched and all of these other things in terms of, oh, that Chicago is worse than Afghanistan and is more violent than that particular community in Afghanistan. The 25 most dangerous cities are run by Democratic mayors, which is a lie. That the capital was the capital of Washington, D.C., bloodthirsty, horrible place, and the worst. So only their side is speaking of non-MAGA Americans in these terms. It's not our side that's doing it. And so I want to go to something else because, once again, I think context and facts are important. And so this is there's a great website that I go to that I get and I'm getting news from the MAGA universe called The Righty. And they do a really great job of aggregating news articles from MAGA and conservative mainstream media. So you can get an understanding of what they're saying. So today's newsletter, unfortunately, talking about what happened to Charlie Kirk. These are the headlines from the MAGA mainstream media outlets. Mind you, nobody in non-MAGA America is saying anything of violent towards the MAGA side. Fox News, progressive madness killed Charlie Kirk. To the left, for much of the Democratic Party and much of the mainstream media, Charlie's success was unforgivable. They spent a decade painting him as a racist, a bigot, and finally as a real life fascist. That's why Charlie Kirk is dead today. Once again, we don't know who shot him. We don't know their age, their gender, their race, their voting history, their citizen status, their anything. We don't know what books they read, what they think, if they go to church. We know nothing about the person. There's a person that's a suspected person that's been put out on some videos, looks like a white man, and that's about all we know. And that might not be the person. Was Charlie a racist? Yes. Was Charlie a bigot? Yes. Was Charlie a supporter of eliminating the tenets of our constitutional republic and representative democracy? Yes. We don't know how that played into what happened to him. So I'm not going to, from my perspective as a personal 10th generation African American citizen, sit here and actually say that somehow there's a temperature issue with non-MAGA Americans. We're not speaking in terms to hurt anybody. When we do speak about truthful things that these folks have said that are divisive, that are racist, that are harmful, that are anti our constitutional republic and representative democracy, we've said it, but it's not because we're trying to get anybody in any sort of dangerous situation. Town Hall, a news outlet that I have followed over the years when I used to be a pollster back in the early 2010s. I got some of my polls published through them. They murdered Charlie Kirk and they must pay. They, non-MAGA Americans, all of you who are going on talking about, both sides have to bring down the temperature. I'm sorry, but where in the traditional or liberal mainstream media is anybody cheering or promoting violence against Charlie, promoting it against Sean, promoting it against Donald Trump, promoting it against anybody on the MAGA side? Is Midas Touch saying anything like this? Or Brian Tyler Cohen or the Bulwark or any of them? No, it's a fucking lie. I don't want what happened to Charlie to have happened. I'm a son of a mother who was murdered 9 days before my second birthday, and what was part of a person who had been running an insurance scam here in Detroit back in the early 1970s when insurance laws were lax and you could take out policies on people without their awareness. And she was visiting friends and she was murdered because the friends were being targeted. I'm also the father of two sons, one who died of a drowning accident in 2013. Those are losses that you never get over. I feel for Charlie's children and his wife. I feel for his parents because that is not what any parent should experience losing a child. And that is not what any child should experience losing their parent. Nobody, though, in this side wanted that to happen to him. So it's a lie when Town Hall is saying they murdered Charlie Kirk. And then Town Hall, a very loud, visible organization in the MAGA mainstream media, says they must pay. Kirk Slighter, Our Constitution addresses how to deal with this situation. We have the laws and we control the federal law enforcement apparatus. We will turn it on the full weight, not against not only the perpetrators of of this crime, but the people behind the web of subversion from the left. So once again, if you're one of the 75,017,613 million Americans who voted for Vice President Harris in one of the 19 to 25 states that voted for Vice President Harris, President Biden, or Secretary Clinton, Town Hall is saying you are treasonous. And the Constitution gives us the ability to deal with treasonous people, and we're going to come after you. Really? No one on our side is speaking like this. So, this whole dynamic of both sides, it's only one side that speaks like this. Front page, another very vocal, visible media entity in the MAGA media. Media slimes Charlie Kirk after death. Media narratives, when they're not directly attacking Kirk, focus above all else on gun control, suggesting that Kirk's support for the Second Amendment led to his death. The media is truly the enemy. Front page, you're part of the fucking media, your damn self. You're not a part of the media. You're a part of the MAGA mainstream media, but you're a media outlet. So you're the enemy too. So when you say the media is the enemy, you must be including yourself because you are part of that enemy. No, it's bullshit. It's lies. Gateway pundit. Good Lord. Gateway pundit. Charlie Kirk was killed for challenging the leftist narrative. Once again, so you understand clearly, leftist is code for anybody who didn't vote for Trump or a MAGA candidate. So if you're in Alabama, you didn't vote for Kay Ivory or Tommy Tuberville, you're in the left. If you just didn't vote, you're in the left. Your lack of voting or your voting and believing that you have the right to vote as you choose will not protect you from the way these people look at you. You have to at least be aware and utilize your agency to get active through your vote, through your economic choices, through your socializing choices, and the like, because this is dangerous, but this is what these people think about you. Apparently, and this is from Gateway Pundit, apparently they believe Kirk was Hitler simply because he asked questions, cited data, and challenged beliefs they refused to examine. Now, that's BS. Sometimes Charlie had some actual facts, but a lot of the stuff that Charlie said was made up, wasn't true. But no one in our side tried to hurt this man. Charlie Kirk was murdered for winning the war of public persuasion. The Washington Examiner, a very major print mainstream MAGA media organization. Charlie Kirk was only 31 years old and a college dropout, but in over a decade, he transformed the nation's university campuses, a conservative shepherd who galvanized millions of aimless college campus conservatives. His nonprofit transcended his generation. That's not bad, but the title is inciting. ATF reports InfoWars, Alex Jones. ATF reporting they believe Charlie Kirk's shooter was a trans activist. Bullshit, but that's what they were saying earlier. We don't know. Once again, we have no idea who this person was and is. We don't even know if this person is still alive, if this person is in the country. We know nothing. So rampant speculation by anybody, including those who might want to think that there's somehow the framework of this was done to hurt non-MAGA Americans by making it look like we did it, but it was really done by MAGA Americans. I've seen some of that online. That's not responsible because we don't know anything. The man shouldn't be dead. That's clear. He should be able to have continued living. He should have been able to finish his event and go home and be with his family and then go to the next stuff that he had on his agenda. The New York Post, Rupert Murdoch paper. The killing of Charlie Kirk is an attack on free speech itself. How refreshing in the age of shouting TV heads and vapid social media posturing that Charlie Kirk will go to any campus or auditorium to happily engage in lively conversation without resorting to insults and mic drop ready applause lines. Now, I will give Charlie credit in that framework. He wasn't going in and using terms to directly dehumanize the person he was debating with, or to get loud or to be bombastic. That's a good thing. So let's, but the dynamic of the New York Post, who regularly writes about shutting down the speech of non-MAGA Americans and non-MAGA institutions, is kind of biased. Then the National Review, a traditionally well-respected conservative media organization started, I believe, in the time of William F. Buckley, who, if you've studied William F. Buckley, and I like William F. Buckley. I like a lot of the things that William F. Buckley spoke on. That might surprise people. I'm a conservative Democratic voter, and there are conservative Democrats out here. We can look at people like him and Jack Kemp and Bob Dole and others and Bill Milliken and see that there are good points within the Republican policy world back in the day, not in the MAGA world, but in the Republican world, because you got to really separate the two. So, but the National Review, Charlie never gave up the fight, and you can't either. This was meant to intimidate people. Don't let it. Once again, we don't know who did this. Ultimately, once we have that understanding, then we can make those determinations of what the motivation was. But it's not time to start saying that this was done to intimidate MAGA Americans. We don't know. European conservative, dialogue died with Charlie Kirk. Not bad. Is one takeaway from the, but here's what does become bad. If there's one takeaway from the assassination, from this assassination, it is that conservatives must get up from their armchairs and stop being nice. You cannot talk to those who hate you. I'm sorry, I didn't really know that MAGA dictatorship or MAGA fascists or MAGA pro-terrorists or other MAGA-aligned individuals were actually trying to be nice. I haven't seen any of that, but that's just me. But you cannot talk to those who hate you. That actually is something that in the non-MAGA pro-democracy side, I think we need to take up as something to consider as well. It's time to probably stop trying to talk to those folks. I mean, I know that that might sound controversial, but remember, 68% of voting eligible Americans did not vote for Donald Trump and MAGA in 2024. They either voted for Vice President Harris, third party candidates, voted down ballot, and skipped the top of the ticket. That totaled 79,333,813, or the other 84 million did not vote. That's 164 plus million non-Trump, non-MAGA Americans. That's the universe to speak to if we're trying to build a sustainable majority that can do good for the country, keep our constitutional republic, and do good in spite of not talking to our family members on that side. Look, I got family members that I didn't talk to for years, and family members that didn't talk to me for years. It didn't mean that the things that I did tried to do anything to negatively harm them. We just didn't talk. We just didn't interact. That might be something to consider, non-MAGA Americans. Daily Caller, formerly started by Tucker Carlson. They hate you and want you dead. Once again, this they, just like the town hall, they mean non-MAGA Americans, which non-MAGA Americans don't want anybody dead. Charlie believed in debating people on the other side of the aisle. He wanted to talk about the differences in our country, our differences as a country. He loved dialogue. He supported free speech. They killed him for it. Once again, we don't know who did this to him, but non MAGA Americans, Democrats, independent, non MAGA Republicans, third party, they're not trying to kill you. No one is trying to get you. Stop that paranoid bullshit, Daily Caller. No one is trying to get you. There's no concerted effort to try to do anything of harm to you. Front page, again, the left is a terrorist movement. We're up against people who want to kill us all, not just Trump or Kirk, all of us. Once again, not only is that alarmist bullshit, but it's not fucking true. Front page. No, I will never vote for one of your candidates, but I'm not trying to hurt you. I don't want to talk to you. I want to sit down and break bread with you. But damn it, I don't want nobody to hurt you. Just like I don't want one of you all to hurt me. And we can live like that. We don't have to interact and still live in this country. And that's perfectly okay. Perfectly okay. No one is trying to get you, so it's lies. But to demonize everybody who's in the non MAGA American camp is purposeful. Then the Federalists, tied to the Federalist Society. The left has never been held accountable for political violence. Violence has long been weaved into the fabric of the American left, and until we reckon with that, a bleak political future awaits. Remember, these are the people who were supportive of pardoning the MAGA January 6th terrorists who attacked the Capitol on January 6th, and also excused the MAGA terrorist attack on the Oregon State Capitol in December 2020 when they were doing the certification of the vote in the state capitol, and have said nothing about any of those terrorist attacks that I mentioned earlier by MAGA-aligned entities. But somehow, oh, and that didn't include, when I was going through that, didn't include the Tree of Life synagogue terrorist attack that was a MAGA terrorist attack, or any of the other MAGA terrorist attacks that have taken place on Jewish Americans, Sikh Americans, etc. Those attacks, as well, along with the ones that I've mentioned, are all beyond heinous. But the Federalist Society doesn't say anything about that. Those people should, whatever happens, happens. They're not writing any articles about MAGA terrorism, but they're lying that there is a terrorist element in non MAGA America, which there is not. PJ Media goes full out. Watershed radicalization of the American right. Radicalization of conservatives is the same response to the madness that Democrats have surrounded us with. Apathy and the notion that there is an inherent value in being moderate are out of the window. These are, in combination, media outlets that touch tens of millions of Americans on a weekly basis. And this is the garbage that they're spewing out to their readers and viewers and followers. And because I follow this so you don't have to. And like I say, I will encourage everybody, go to the writing, subscribe to get their aggregated newsletter, which those newsletters have those highlights and news clips, have links so you can go read the articles. Read the comments that are made by fellow American citizens. It will be a wake up call so you can get out of the false flag of thinking that the majority in the MAGA universe see us as they see themselves. They don't. We can deal with that without it having to have any sort of violent activities like what happened to Charlie or what happened to Representative Hortman and Senator Hoffman. But we have to at least understand that this is where we are. And there is no way around this. There is no coming together. And look, guys, I'll just put it out here like this. The last 11 years of my father's life, we didn't speak. We had an issue where, because of what was going on with my first ex-wife and my son, and my father siding with her against me, my son, my second ex-wife, and my other son, I cut off the relationship. I couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't live in that toxic dynamic. And I was completely willing to stay in that space. And I have a brother who asked me to pick a side, him and my father or my family, my wife and my sons. And I picked my sons and my wife and told him he was out of line. And I haven't talked to him in 15 years. Perfectly okay with that. Because sometimes you have to make a stand, and in making that stand, that means you have to cut people off. And while not everybody wants to do that, sometimes for sanity, for clarity, and for the sake of living a good life, you have to cut the tie, burn the bridge, let it go. And that might mean a decade of not speaking. That might mean forever. That's okay. So when you see stuff like this, so let me go to another example. This is Stephen Miller. So I think that this is important because, and while I'm doing this video, and I know this one is one of my longer ones that I'm doing, but I'm doing it because I am personally concerned and I feel like someone has to speak these points that I'm speaking because there's been too much concern that you can't say these things because it's not the right thing to say. Let them call non-MAGA folks all of the stuff that they want to call us. We have to try to be above the fray and talk about healing and talk about coming together. We've denounced the violence. We're not supportive of the violence and we're not involved with the violence. We've done our part. To me, we've done our part. We can also at the same time hold multiple true things at the same time, which this true thing is these folks, by their own words, wish ill on us. Why are you going to keep inviting them to your house? Why are you going to keep going over to eat dinner with them thinking that they're not going to try to mess with the food? I mean, I just showed you what they're saying. I showed you what Trump said about us. I mean, come on, people. Let's just be real. So, a couple weeks ago, Stephen Miller goes and calls the Democratic Party, and once again, all Democrats, a domestic extremist organization. And in this, and this is a couple of articles that I clipped, one from the National where he talks about it, and what he said in his interview with Sean Hannity on August 25th was the, let's see, the Democratic, I'm gonna call it we're the Democratic Party. I'm a Democrat. It doesn't count everybody that's non-MAGA Americans, but I'm a Democratic member. The Democratic Party does not fight for, care for, or represent American citizens. It is an entity devoted exclusively to the defense of hardened criminals, gangbangers, and illegal alien killers and terrorists. The Democratic Party is not a political party, it's a domestic extremist organization. So, just like Ice Cube, when he did the song No Vaseline after leaving NWA, and they had dissed him in one of their tracks, is 100 Miles and Running, when they had dissed him, and he started off No Vaseline, here's what they think about you, and playing their negative comments about him. This man, who is a general in the Trump dictatorship regime in the White House, is telling you what he thinks you are if you are a non-MAGA Republican. He thinks that those of us who vote for Democrats are not American citizens. They don't fight for, care for, represent American citizens. So once again, the 75 million, the 82 million, and the 65 million Americans who voted for Secretary Clinton, and the 69 million Americans who voted for President Obama, Secretary Clinton, President Biden, and Vice President Harris, we're not American citizens, in Stephen Miller's opinion. We are all either hardened criminals, gangbangers, illegals, alien killers, and terrorists. And our party, and because of our party, our voting choice, we're an extremist organization. Now, earlier in the year, there were a couple things that happened. One, in the Trump regime, a couple of executive orders. Well, executive order, and in the it was in the, I have to go back to see if it was in the Fuck Over America Act of 2025, which is also called the Big Beautiful Bill, or if it was in the continuing resolution back in March to keep the government funded until the end of this month. But in one of those two, there was a provision for allowing the Treasury Secretary to be able to classify a nonprofit organization as a terrorist-related organization. Separately, Donald Trump, one of his executive orders, targeted Act Blue as somehow violating campaign finance law and being funded by foreign actors, enemies of the country, etc., and running as a criminal enterprise, and directing the DOJ to investigate Act Blue. That's a lie, uh, just a clear lie, a truthful lie. It's a pure lie. But tie that in with what Trump said that I read to you in his vlog about Charlie Kirk's murder. Tie that into what Stephen Miller is saying here, and tie that into that legislation that passed earlier this year. It gives the room for them to declare the Democratic Party a terrorist organization, to go after people that contribute to the party, people, so donors, people that vote for the party. It gives them that ability. And by that, it gives them the ability to effectively silence the 164.5 million Americans who didn't vote for MAGA by taking away our primary alternative and putting lots of us under criminal prosecution or in jail. Now, you also tie in the fact that they are prosecuting illegally and improperly, but they're prosecuting members of the Democratic Democratic senators, Democratic congressional House members. They're prosecuting or investigating attorney generals that are duly elected, governors, other elected officials, businesses, universities, etc., you see that it all ties into a structure to be able to purposely delegitimize and a context for criminalizing and jailing your main political opposition. It's very clear. And sometimes, like I say, you have to see things exactly as they are and speak to them exactly as they are so you can plan on what do we do now? Because we're in the end game, as Dr. Strange told Iron Man Tony Stark. We're in the end game now. Now we have to work from what happens next. And so, when you see this, and one of the things that was said in this article was that Democrats in Congress should demand that Stephen Miller be fired or apologize and withdraw his grotesque claims. Now, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, y'all got to step up y'all game because these actions that you need to take are important because you need to make this an issue. They are attacking the 68% of America that's non-MAGA. You need to stand up and say, you're fighting for us. So here's a little bit of additional context to what he said this is from Snoops, a little bit more information. So after he said we're a domestic extremist organization, then it kind of gives some context to say, look, based off what they're saying, if the Democratic Party is not an actual political party, but a criminal enterprise, then they can't be treated as rivals in an open, free, democratic process. They have to be treated as a criminal enterprise, a criminal entity. So then it also ties into something he said back in March, where he described immigration as an invasion, where he talked about Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, requiring the president to halt the invasion and no district court can override that mandate, which is bullshit because Marbury v. Madison gives judicial review at a federal and a state level. That's settled law, no matter how much Stephen in his pipe dream bullshit fantasies wants to say it isn't. That's fact. But he talks about we're being invaded, towns are subjugated, treasuries plundered. All of those are fucking lies. All of those are lies. We're not being invaded. Our treasury hasn't been plundered. Our democracy was not torn apart during the Biden administration. It's being torn apart now by the MAGA folks. So there's a couple of other things that I wanted to say to this. Yeah. So this was a more detailed clip. So then he said, this is what Sean Hannity said in terms of Democrats as well in the same interview. You can predict with pinpoint accuracy how many people on a given weekend are going to be shot and killed in Chicago. They haven't lifted a finger to solve the problem. That's bullshit. And then the Stephen goes into, after calling us a domestic terrorist organization, look at Chicago. They shut down the police department. They handcuffed law enforcement. And as Trump said, they turned the streets of Chicago into a bloody killing field. It's a lie. It's an objective lie based off of actual data reality. And it's it's bullshit. Let me actually, because I want to speak to this, and I think it's important sometimes to speak to those sorts of facts from a data vantage point so you can give people that sort of clear context. So give me a second while I pull this up so I can speak to it because it was something that I sent to Governor Pritzker to hopefully have him use in his conversations and Mayor Johnson about how do you respond to the lies about crime in your community. And so I'm scrolling. I'm gonna get to it. I will find it. Thank you for your patience in working with me, people. Let's see here. Let's see here. Let's see. Let's see. Come on. Where is it? Where is it? Good Lord. All right. So here was the dynamic that I laid out. Had to get some water. Chicago has, as of August 7th, 2025, 2,721,308 residents. On the weekend, they have an average of 364,170 people. So this, and I sent this to him and posted it on social media on August 30th. This is after one of Trump's lie tweets about crime in Chicago. And there were 6 people that were killed, 24 people that had been shot that weekend before. So on the weekend, Chicago has a total population, both workers and living residents, of 3,085,478 people. 30 people were shot or killed that weekend. That's 0.000972% of the total population of the city over the course of a weekend. Those 30 incidences are tragedies. They should not have happened. The people need to be prosecuted, and that it's not a bloody killing field. Next, Chicago is 227.7 square miles in land size. The average number of blocks, city blocks in a square mile, is 269. That's 61,251 blocks where people live, where businesses are in the city. And you know what a block is, where you live. That's one shooting per 2,041.7 blocks. So, once again, that particular weekend, in 99%, over 99.99903% of the population did not experience a shooting. And over 61,200 blocks within the city did not experience a shooting. That's not a killing field. A killing field would be what we see that Trump is supported in letting Russia run amok in Ukraine, letting Israel do what they're doing in Gaza, letting other wars pick up and starting wars like with Venezuela. Those are killing field type situations. Wars that are taking place in Africa and South America. Those are killing fields. Chicago is not a killing field. You're basically talking about, and really it's not even 30 blocks. It's more than likely, because most crimes are proximity related in nature, it's probably about 10 blocks out of 61,251 blocks in the city where someone was shot during that weekend. That's not a killing field. So if you're in one of the other 61,000 blocks that didn't have a shooting, is there blood on your street? Are you in a killing field? No, you're not. But that's what they say about you. You should take that some kind of way, because I do. But that's what they say to legitimize invading your city and turning America into a dictatorship. And then, oh, this is the other one. So this one was from Wired. And I know Wired's gotten a lot of crap for their Taylor Lorenz article, but this was an article that was important that they wrote. War is here. The far right responds to Charlie Kirk shooting with calls for violence. It's actually not the far right, it's the MAGA right, which is encompassing of the overwhelming majority of what used to be Republicans. It's now a MAGA dictatorship party, not a Republican party. There's a few Republicans left, but they are not MAGA Republicans. They're not MAGA people, period. So some of the calls for violence against non-MAGA Americans, starting with, let's see, so starting with Alex Jones, this is a war, this is a war, this is a war. For years, the radical left is compared, oh, they talked about Trump. Then Stuart Rhodes, who was convicted of seditious conspiracy against the United States of America, a true MAGA terrorist who was pardoned, talks about restarting his paramilitary army for Trump, like the Irish Republican Army that worked with their political partner Sinn Féin during the Troubles in Northern Ireland from the 50s through the 1990s. And talking about if my security team had been at the event, they would have been up on the high point looking for potential threats. They would have saved Charlie from being shot. Then he called on Trump to do what's right, what's necessary, invoke the Insurrection Act. You should declare the left in this country is in obvious open rebellion against the law of the United States. They're committing insurrection, they're aiding and abetting an invasion, and they're blocking the execution of federal law. You don't think that that's in the mind of Russ Vought and Stephen Miller and Susie Wiles and all of these people that are inside of his regime, the people that spend their cabinet meetings determining who's going to kiss his ass the best and who's going to give him the best puckering up in terms of their praise and worship session? Come on, people. So, once again, he's talking about you, non-MAGA voter. He's talking about you. He's saying that the United States government should declare war on you because you're a non-MAGA American. He's lying about you, saying you are that you're committing rebellion against the United States. He actually led a insurrection against the United States and was convicted for it. Nobody on our side is saying this stuff. No one. Ed Martin, who is in charge of the weaponization committee for the Department of Justice, wrote, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, save the Lord." Romans 12, verse 19. Of course, he don't go no further than that. He doesn't realize that Jesus spoke of a peaceful path going forward, not a path of the Old Testament. Then you got Elon Musk, the South Afrikaner. The left is a party of murder. Then quoted a post that blamed the left-wing mainstream media and figures like Gavin Newsom for radicalizing people against right-wing figures like Trump. One, that's a lie, but two, he's radicalizing MAGA Americans to take violent action against non-MAGA Americans. So is Ed Martin, so is Stuart Rhodes, so is Donald Trump. They're doing the same shit that they're saying somebody else is doing because no one else in the non-MAGA American universe is doing that. Then Stephen Miller's wife wrote that even the liberals condemning violence had blood on their hands. Laura Loomer, you could be next. The left are terrorists. Chris Rufo, who has been anti-diversity, said the radical left is responsible for the shooting and urged the U.S. government to infiltrate, disrupt, arrest, and incarcerate all those responsible for this chaos. Republican, well, MAGA dictatorship representative. He's not a Republican. Derek Van Orton from Wisconsin blamed the shooting on left-wing political violence, and on Twitter said whoever does not condemn the violence is part of the problem. The gloves are off. Then on the floor of the House, there was argument in regards to a moment of silence for Charlie Kirk. Remember, there's been no moment of silence for Democratic State Senator, State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, or Democratic State Senator from Minnesota Hoffman and his wife, or for Speaker Pelosi's husband, or for any of the folks that were victims of the, at least outside of the Tree of Life and some of the attacks on the Jewish community. But most of those other ones, like Buffalo and El Paso, Colorado, Jeffersontown, Kentucky, etc., there's been nothing. Gilroy, California, no moment of silence for any of those folks. All of the school shootings, like Marjorie Stoneman and others, no moment of silence for them. But they did a moment of silence for Charlie Kirk. And Alina Pauline, Anna Paulina Luna yelled and said that our side caused this. And then said, every damn one of you who called us a fascist did this. And then she lied and talked about doping kids and cutting genitalia, which is bullshit, and inciting racial violence by supporting organizations that exploit minorities, protecting criminals, and stirring hate. You are the hate you claim to fight. All of those are lies. Every word she said is a fucking lie and has to be responded to as a lie. No Democratic, pro-democracy, or non-MAGA entity or group is doping kids. No one is cutting off genitalia of kids or adults. No one is promoting racial violence in the non-MAGA world. No one is exploiting minorities. No one is protecting criminals. They supported the election of a 34-time convicted felon to the White House. They are the pro-criminal party. And then Blake Masters, who's connected to Peter Thiel and J.D. Vance, said left-wing violence is out of control and it's not random. We neither need to destroy the NGO donor patronage network that enables it and foments it, or it will destroy us. Then Michael Cervinich, Congressional Hearings Now, every billionaire funding far-left extremism, Soros, Bill Gates, Reid Hoffman, RICO investigation, the libs of TikTok owner, Twitter account owner said that this is war. So, I mean, look, people, come on. This is what they're saying about us. This is what they want to do to us who are non-MAGA Americans. You know, calling for arrest of people, RICO style investigations to crack down against Democratic donors. This is what these people think of you. But somehow in this time frame, we're supposed to be talking about we both need to bring down the temperature. So let's just be real. Is Joy Reid or Don Lemon saying any shit like this? No. Is Jim Acosta or Terry Moran saying any kind of shit like this? No. Is Tim Miller saying any kind of crap like this? No. Is MSNBC saying any kind of crap like this? No. Is anybody in the non-MAGA communications ecosystem, traditional media, traditional mainstream media, or liberal mainstream media saying any stuff like this? No, never has, never will. Is Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer saying this? Is House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries saying this? Is any member of the House or Senate Democratic caucus saying any stuff like this? Is Governor Pritzker saying this? Is Governor Newsom saying this? Is Governor Whitmer, Governor Moore? Are any of us, is Governor Scott, who as a real Republican voted for Vice President Harris? So you are in the group that these people are calling for to be harassed, jailed, or worse. Are any of you all saying anything like this? No. So this is not a time to get into a crouch position and say, well, we all need to collectively. We've been doing our part because we've never used this type of language. There is nobody on our side using this type of language. There is nobody on our side calling for this type of violence. No one. It all sits in the MAGA side of America. And we have to acknowledge and live with that reality. There's the MAGA side and the non-MAGA side. The two are not going to be united. The two are not going to be equal. And that's okay. I love my father, but I'm perfectly okay that I didn't talk to him the last 11 years of his life because that was a journey I didn't need to go down anymore. And anyone that and not having talked to my brother for the past 15 going on 16 years, I'm perfectly okay with that too. And I love my brother. He's a great young man. But our lives don't need to intersect anymore. And I'm completely okay with that. And I say this just being a cold, pragmatic realist. And it may sound cold, but damn it, sometimes cold reality is what matters. These folks are the only ones who've turned on the stove. They're the only ones that have the key to even turn on the stove. We've never turned on the stove. If the stove is going to get turned down or turned off, it's on them. It's only on them. It's not on us. Period. End of fucking story. Wow. So I've probably been talking for over an hour. This is kind of long, but I thought it was important to put this out here because what happened to Charlie Kirk is a tragedy. And as someone whose mother was taken from me and who lost a son to a tragic accident, I feel for his parents, his wife, his children, because I've been in that boat. It's not a boat that anyone should be in. And that man, regardless of how I thought about him in terms of the things that came out of his mouth, should have been able to live to an old age. And every person in the MAGA side needs to be able to live to an old age. And every person in the non-MAGA side needs to be able to live to an old age. And nobody needs to have anything done the fuck to them. Leave everybody alone. Let everybody live. And while wanting that, I also understand that the people like Ed Martin and Representative Luna and the InfoWars guy, Alex Jones, they're wishing harm on people like me. I never wish harm on them, but they're the ones who have to turn down the temperature. And Donald Trump is wishing harm on people like me and people like you if you're in the non-MAGA American universe. That's the reality. So we can accept the reality and we can speak from those truths and we can have those honest conversations, or we can live in a fantasy world, purport fantasy myths, and act as if there's something we have to atone for. We don't have anything to atone for because we're not responsible for what took place. And we have sent and said not only our condolences, but have continued to say, this is not what we want, this is not what we promote, and this is not what would be something that we would ever do. You think all them times Charlie Kirk came to debate and with people, no matter what they said to him, nobody tried to hurt him because nobody on our side wanted to do that. Nobody. Whoever this crazed person is, or whatever they did, or whatever affiliation they have, if they're fine, which I pray that they are, that person is that individual person. They're not indicative of anything. But let's deal with that person as they are. Let's accept that right now, the MAGA American side is calling for hate and vengeance and violence on non-MAGA Americans. Non-MAGA Americans need to continue in the posture of saying violence is nothing that we support. We pray for his family, and fuck you, MAGA, because we have nothing to apologize for, and we're not going to sit here and act like we've done something wrong. All three of those things can be true at the same time and are true. So that's my thoughts. And normally I'd have a tagline here, but like I say, today was about me making this as a father, as a American citizen, as a person that has a voice and wants to speak off of, oh, you know what? Good Lord. I've been doing this whole thing with the share. All right. As somebody who's just tired of letting this be what drives the conversation, it's time for us to stop it. And it's time for us to deal with the reality of what we're facing. Thank you. And, you know, hopefully you will follow my channel here on Substack and my other channels, my YouTube channel as well. We'll go from there. See you on the other side.